it's not really about what Trump's campaigning on against her, is it? I mean, he's campaigning against her personally, not where she's vulnerable in policy terms, which is obviously her record and her connection to Biden. Now, given that it's only been a month since Biden handed the reins to Kamala Harris, give us a sense of the mood there today. How are the Democrats feeling?
Well, there is both a sense of relief amongst Democrats and a sense of enthusiasm. They're in a very deep and dark place in the last days of Joe Biden's candidacy. And what's happened is there's been a massive reinvigoration of the base. They've had a surge of support, particularly out of states like New York and California. Now, as you know, those states don't decide the election, but certainly they influence the volunteer base. And the money that Democrats have now raised under Kamala Harris is close to $1 billion in both the super PAC and in the main funded campaign. Now, they cannot spend that amount of money. They tell me they cannot spend that amount of money in the next 77 days. So it's not going to be based on money. It's going to be based on the enthusiasm of the base and how dedicated they are to getting out and voting against Donald Trump. Now, I'll just say one thing, Peter. I went through 4 days of a Republican convention where all they talked about is Donald Trump. On the first day here in Chicago at the Democratic Convention, all they're talking about is Donald Trump. So there's no shortage of overload about Donald Trump in American politics.
One of the things I noticed at the Republican convention was the real absence of celebrity types. I mean, they were intent on showcasing middle America, mums who lost their kids to addiction, returned servicemen and women, the economic issues that dominate the swing states. And we know the Democrats love Hollywood. How much is that going to be in terms of a distraction when the people they need to win over are likely to see this as elitist and out of touch?
Yeah, look, you're exactly right. I am deeply sceptical of this idea of rolling out big celebrities. At the Republican convention, they had union leaders, they had veterans, they had everyday workers who were coming out to endorse Donald Trump, speaking from the heart. And so far, there's, the Democrats are still focusing on celebrities, but also they're rolling out all the former presidents and candidates, and that's great for the audience here in the convention. But is it really reaching into the homes of everyday Americans that are struggling to pay the bills? I don't think so. I don't think didn't work for Hillary Clinton, and I don't think it's going to work for Kamala Harris. As far as I'm concerned, yes, Kamala Harris has massive momentum. It's really energised the base, but I still feel as though she has one or two press conferences from a campaign that can be rapidly unwound.
What about the pro-Palestinian protesters, Joe? We know the Chicago police are already concerned that some have breached the outer perimeter at the venue. We didn't see a lot of protesting at the RNC. Is this going to be a problem for the Democrats? I mean, they're well and truly already to the left of where the party used to be, but for these protesters, that's not enough. And how do these radical issues play out in the swing states?
Well, everyone talks about the Chicago Democratic Convention in 1968, and that was where there were protests about Vietnam. It was a different environment, and there has been a silent fear here that the protests about Palestinians and Gaza would have a similar impact. The fact is, which is quite interesting, that more than 100,000 registered Democrats voted effectively against Joe Biden in the Michigan primary because they want the Biden administration to take a different tack to support the Palestinians in Gaza. Now, those people who elected representatives to this convention have not declared in support of Kamala Harris. And so what's happening behind the scenes is they are negotiating with the Harris team on the policy on Gaza, and they are seeking speaking rights at this convention. So far they've been denied. So by Thursday they could be openly protesting on the floor of this convention, which will have a negative impact on Harris's campaign.
You mentioned even at the start, from day one, this convention is already all about Trump and not so much about Kamala Harris. There's been a lot of polls around. It's tight. You're right to point out that there's an energy now in the Democratic campaign that was absent 4 weeks ago. Give us your best read on how things stand now between the two and the contest in the states that will determine the result in November.
Well, the key state remains Pennsylvania, and you've got to follow both the candidates and the money. And that's always going to be the pointer to where it's most hotly contested. I think Pennsylvania, Wisconsin and Michigan still remain the key states. You know, it's still the case that Kamala Harris needs to disavow this left-wing agenda that really has been part and parcel of her time in politics. And those states are not going to warm to a left-wing agenda, particularly on issues like immigration and failing to address the cost of living.
Well, thank you, Joe. You've got a big week ahead of you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Peter.